Well, welcome everybody. I hope you're having lovely weather where you are. So welcome to the TeacherMatic Summer Community Webinar. So just a little bit about what we're going to do today and how today will work. So why are we here? If this is your first time at any of the community webinars, what we do this once a term. It's an opportunity for us to share what we're doing at TeacherMatic, new developments, new initiatives, new functionality, to get some participation from some of our users, to share best practice, etc. And so it's a combination of that. And at our summer community webinar, we also have our annual prize giving. So a number of things we'll be covering today. So you've all got access to the chat, and it'd be great if you can all introduce yourselves on the chat. If you could say where you're from, what your role is, and maybe tell us what the weather's like where you are. And if you've got any questions at all during the sessions, if you just post your questions into the chat, those will be monitored. And at the end of each session, the speaker will answer the questions. So you won't get an immediate answer to the question, but we will, as far as possible, answer all the questions that come up. If we get inundated by questions, we might have to respond to some by email, but I think we should be fine with that. And please be aware that the meeting is being recorded and transcribed. Okay, so this is today's agenda. So myself kicking it off, doing the welcome, and it's great to see so many of you introducing yourselves. That's much appreciated. I will shortly be handing over to my colleagues Ollie and Sam, who will be giving you updates in terms of what's coming up or what's been developed recently, plus what's coming up technically, both on the platform and with generators. And then we'll be handing over to Jeff, who's we've dragged out of retirement a bit. Jeff was one of the original 4 founders of TeacherMatic, been happily retired for, I think it's best part of a year now, Jeff. And has been walking the Scottish Highlands, and Jeff has judged the annual TeacherMatic Awards. So we've had quite a few submissions from around our user base for both the individual and the organisational awards. Jeff has been busy over the last few days evaluating those, and we'll be announcing the third, second and winners in both categories. And then following on from that, we're very pleased to welcome Rajesh Mistry from the Manchester College, who will be sharing their journey over 3 years with TeacherMatic. The Manchester College is one of our biggest users of TeacherMatic. They're doing some excellent work, and having sort of seen them develop, I thought it would be useful for you all to see the sorts of things that they've been doing and how they've implemented TeacherMatic. And then finally, the last delivered session will be Sam talking about this SAFE framework, which is, as you may be aware, we've been doing an awful lot of work about assessment over the last year or so. We've been working with JISC and 15 providers on a pilot project on assessment and feedback. We've learned an awful lot from that. We've developed and improved our assessment tools. And one of the outputs of this is the SAFE framework, which Ethan will explain, which is a guide to help you implement assessment and feedback across your organisation. And then finally, at the end, as we always do in these webinars, we'll have a bit of an open discussion, an opportunity for you to talk to the TeacherMatic team, to ask any questions, to make any suggestions as to improvements that you'd like to see, etc. So that is today's agenda, and I'm now going to hand over to Ollie and Sam, who will be talking about the technical developments on the platform. So Ollie, are you kicking off?
Yes, sorry about that. Thank you everyone for coming. So as usual, I'll be kind of walking you through some of the platform updates, things that have happened on the TeacherMatic platform, and then I'll be passing you over to Isam. He'll be talking about generator-specific updates. So it's a rather modest list this time around. I've picked just a few items and avoided the things that probably aren't relevant to the audience that this termly webinar usually gets. And Isam also tells me he's got a lot to talk about. So firstly, we've now got a few more modern LLMs available to us within TeacherMatic. So the very latest 5.2 and 5.4 mini. And we've also implemented web search in some of our models. So we're always being asked about which models TeacherMatic's using. And as of now, all of our more recent generators are using the very latest 5.4 model, and most of them have web search enabled as well. This isn't the case across the board. We are using web search specifically quite sparingly for now, because there is a trade-off with the response time. So in this video to the right-hand side of my screen, I'm just demonstrating that now in multiple choice questions generator, you can use something like last week's news as the topic, and it'll generate questions based on things that happened last week. The multiple choice questions generator is generating a few questions based on things that happened last week. So this eliminates the issue that we've had in the past, which is that the models themselves have a knowledge cutoff. And that knowledge cutoff, depending on the model, can be quite far in the past. So we think this will be really useful. As I said, this hasn't been rolled out across the board. One of the things I'm wrestling with at the moment is the Chat with TeacherMatic generator. We're doing some testing internally, and it's very useful in a lot of cases. However, it does take quite a long time to generate. So those conversations that many of you have with Chat with TeacherMatic can take quite a long time. Okay, the next thing, which hasn't quite been released, but we're expecting to be released in the next week or so, is the TeacherMatic Canvas integration. So if you have a look at our integrations page at the moment and venture down to the Canvas guide, setting up TeacherMatic within Canvas involves a 15-step process. There's lots of room for error, and it's generally a bit of a faff. But now, as you can see in this little video, all it takes is going into the App Store, searching for TeacherMatic and clicking install. We've preset all of these settings, and we've also used the visibility and placement settings that we think work best. So when you install TeacherMatic through the apps interface, it adds it to the course navigation, and it also restricts visibility to only the teachers of that course. So this is the first phase of our Canvas integration, which, as I said, will be released in the next week or two. And then for September, we're aiming to do a slightly deeper integration, which initially at least will work similar to our Moodle plugin. So from the TeacherMatic Canvas app, you'll be able to generate something and then export directly into your Canvas course. And the next thing is some improvements to the advanced feedback generator. So you can now do things like regenerate comments and export and import assignments. The export and import assignments functionality is specifically for it's our way of allowing you to share an assignment with colleagues. So it will not pull the submissions through, but it will pull all of the information related to that assignment through. And then, as I mentioned previously in the last webinar, we're also working on some new larger features related to advanced feedback, which is comparative feedback, which is almost ready for release, and admin controls. So comparative feedback will compare all of the feedback that has been generated across an assignment, and it will find themes and make some recommendations based on the themes that it's identified. Whereas admin controls are tools that we're making available to organization admins to allow you to keep a tighter control of how members of the organization use AI-assisted marking. So there'll be some functionality to enforce a policy is acknowledged before the teacher can export or finish using the advanced feedback tool. And there'll also be some functionality to ensure that some edits have been made to outputs before they can be downloaded. Okay, and in terms of what we're working towards over the next couple of months, the big thing for us at the moment is modernizing TeacherMatic's look and feel. We've gone through the design stage with this now, and we're already starting to implement it. So it'll be nothing structurally radical, but it'll make TeacherMatic look and feel a bit more modern and work a little bit better. And then following on from that, we're going to work on standardizing the way TeacherMatic generator forms work and simplifying them where possible without losing any functionality. So there'll maybe be a two-step process where you initially select your input and then you fill in some of the supplementary information and then you generate. And then from then we'll look at kind of the other side of the generation process. So after you're happy with the output, what do you do with it? So we're going to make all export options consistent, and we're also going to work on the look and feel of the output. And another priority for us, of course, is the advanced feedback tool and enhancing that as much as possible. Okay, in terms of platform updates, I think that's it. Can I pass it over to you, Isan?
All right. Thanks, Ollie. Very exciting updates. I think I really like the live web search. I think that's really useful, especially in the multiple choice quiz generator. So thank you everyone for joining us, and welcome everyone. And my part of the presentation is going to be looking at what's new and what's coming soon in TeacherMatic. So we've got a number of updates to current generators, some brand new generators, and a couple in beta that we're really excited about. So I'll go through the list with you here, and then I'll do a live demo for each of these generators. So the first one I'm going to show you is the lesson plan generator, and I'll show you what that is all about. So if we have a look at the lesson plan, what you will notice is that you'll notice a new piece of functionality that says, what would you like to base this lesson on? And we're hoping to roll out this functionality in all of the generators. Some of these options were to be found under the more about teaching. So if we go more about teaching, you could always insert here a YouTube URL and upload files. But we thought it was much more sensible to place it here on the top. So in the other generators, you'll see this functionality being rolled out. Now, in the lesson plan, you have one option that, of course, may probably not be rolled out in the majority of generators. And this one, I think, is exceptionally useful. So once you create a schemes of work in the TeacherMatic scheme of work generator, what you're able to do is then create a lesson plan based on that schemes of work. So for example, if I click on this drop-down menu here, and I click on scheme of work or curriculum plan session, I've got the ability to upload the schemes of work that I generated with the schemes of work generator. When I do that, it asks me which session or week number I want to base my lesson plan on. So then I say, you know, week 2, for example, and as you can see, it will go and create me then a lesson plan based on week 2 of that scheme of work. So that is, that's already rolled out in the lesson plan. Do trial it out. The next one I think is incredibly useful, and it tackles a real challenge, especially in FE. I worked in further education in the United Kingdom for over 20 years. And what used to happen is that people would want to enroll onto the course, and we needed really to find out if they were suitable for the course. I used to teach on the BTEC Level 3 IT course. So what was recommended is that we come up with a task for them to do during enrollment week. So for example, obviously if they had 5 GCSEs grades A to C, we'd enroll them. If they were borderline and we wanted to make sure that they were suitable for the course, we'd have to give them a task. Or even if they've enrolled on the course, we normally gave them a task in the first week. It could be a questionnaire, a quiz, you know, something that they had to do. So basically what this does is it will generate a task for you. Let me show you how that works. So it's called the course suitability. So you put the title of the full course and you upload your awarding body specification. For example, you know, the BTEC Level 3 Applied Science. So you're going to upload the unit specification, put the age, and it says add a draft questionnaire here. I say yes. Add a draft task. Yes. How long do you want this task to be? I say an hour. And you've got a few options here. So I've gone for the scenario-based problem solving, and this is what it's created me here. So you can see it's giving me these questions and these answers for then the student to go and complete. Now, as you know, when the student goes and completes it, and say you have, as an example, I was, you know, part-time lecturer, so I had 5 classes, 25 students per class. That is a lot of work to look through. So what we've done is we've now created this course suitability feedback, right? It's in beta. It was only just, you know, released yesterday. So essentially, it will take the students' work once they complete this, and what you would do is you would upload it here. So the first question you need to answer is how to judge the student response. So it says compare completed questionnaire with the course requirements, which is the one we would recommend. We would upload the completed students' work here, their answers, right? Over here, there's the response, sorry, and upload the original suitability results. So the empty, so you'd upload this and then the completed student response. And then you just click on generate. And as you can see, it gives you some detailed feedback that says candidate M looks like a reasonably good candidate for this course. They show genuine interest. So, and then it gives you detailed reasoning, what matches the course well, and then the areas of concern. I think this is an absolute game changer, especially in the first few weeks of that very busy period and in FE when you're enrolling students. So those are 2 brand new generators. I think they'll be very, very useful for you in FE come August and early September. So those are the 2 generators. Now, with the feedback, we've, you know, improved the feedback, and what you have now is this new grading rigor. So from a lot more generous to a lot less generous. So let me show you what that looks like. So if I go to my advanced feedback generator and you set up an assignment, right at the bottom, when you choose your grading scale, or first of all, you choose how you want the work to be graded, you can choose a scale here, and then you've got this new grading rigor over here, right? So that's really, really important over there. Okay, so that's a new feature that we have. Okay, what's next? Comparative assessment generator, right? So you can upload up to 10 submissions at once. And essentially what it does, it spots patterns, gaps, and common themes across all the submissions. And then it generates targeted suggestions for the whole group. Let me show you what that looks like. So what you will do is you would upload your assignment brief here. And then you decide how many submissions you want. I've gone for 3. So I've had to upload the submissions here. So I've got 3 pieces of work here. I've chosen my region, my level. I've even added the different learning needs, of these students. And this is what it does. So it gives me the strengths, submission 1, 2, 3, areas of improvement, what went well, writing style, spelling, punctuation, grammar, and what could have even went better. And as you can see, there's even more detail there. And if I'm not mistaken, Ollie, is this going to be integrated in the advanced feedback generator?
Yeah, that's right. In the coming month or 6 weeks.
There you go. Right, so that's going to be integrated in the advanced feedback generator. Brilliant. For those that don't know, we've got a BTEC feedback generator. I used to teach on the BTEC. I taught, BTEC for over a decade. And the most challenging part of that job was actually giving written, detailed feedback to my learners. I used to love giving in the moment feedback, over the shoulder feedback, verbal feedback. But as soon as I left that classroom, I simply did not have the space or time to give, detailed feedback. Now, for those that don't teach on the BTEC, right, you've got the advanced feedback generator, but this one is specifically being built for BTEC, lecturers. So if I was still I probably would have stayed in the profession a little bit longer had I had access to this generator. So let me show you what that looks like. And because of, time constraints, I have had to, generate these responses. So with this particular one, all I've done is I've uploaded the submitted work. And as you can see, it's giving me everything, where it's been achieved and not achieved. And then it's also given me an assessment record that will be very familiar to those BTEC lecturers here. So if there's anyone in the room that teaches BTEC, let us know in the chat pane if you know about this generator. And if you don't, are you excited, for this generator here, right? Do explore this generator in your own time. Right, this is a really, really big one. For anyone teaching a class with SEND students, and I imagine that's all of you, this changes the workflow. We've had a lot of feedback from our community in terms of the EHCP plans. So what we've done is we've created 2 generators. They're in beta. We would love feedback from everyone. So basically, this changes the workflow. So instead of reading each plan separately, you get a combined view. I think I'm on the wrong one. You get a combined, there's 2 of them, and I'll show you what they look like, right? So this, just to stress, is a guide to help you act on them, and it's not a replacement. It really, really isn't. So let me show you what this looks like. So there are 2 generators. This is the education support plan. What you would do is you would upload these EHCP plans, choose your region, because in different regions of the United Kingdom, they are named different and they slightly work different too. So you're going to upload these EHCP plans, and what it does is it gives you the patterns, needs, and practical strategies, as you can see. An absolute game changer in terms of reducing that workload. And it's something very, very important for us. So that's the educational support plan summarizer. So the next one is, or was that the advisor? So that was the advisor. This one is the summarizer. Apologies for that confusion there. So if we go and look at that one there, essentially what you're going to do is choose if you want it in the classroom, more detail or full summary. I've gone in the classroom, choose your region, and then just upload the student's EHCP plan. So this is individual. This will help the teacher create strategies to create a plan that they can use and share with that learning support assistant, by the way. So basically, this is what it does. Let me zoom in so you can see clearly. At a glance, the strengths: friendly, creative, and highly motivated. Main areas of need, as you can see. And as you know from our lesson plan generator and schemes of work and many others, we've got the learning needs options there. So you're going to definitely, this will help you inform what to add in there. Educational impact over here, what works best, always do, right, and avoid. So if you are the tutor of that course, you're going to then share this document with all the other lecturers on that course. In my opinion, an absolute game changer to support the varying needs of your learners. So with that being said, I hand over back to Peter. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Isan, and actually well ahead of time there for all that. So well done. Okay, Jeff, I hope you're with us because bringing you in a bit earlier than expected. Jeff is going to do the TeacherMatic Awards now. So over to you, Jeff.
The first thing I should say is that I can understand why Peter asked somebody else to judge these applications for the awards, because they're so good. And being able to distinguish between one application and another has been really challenging. And I would say for both the individual awards and the institutional awards, all of them were good, and they all demonstrate just how well people are using TeacherMatic individually and systematically and implementing AI strategies across their institutions. So if you didn't win anything today, please do not think that you didn't deserve it. If it was my choice, I would have given you all awards, but obviously that doesn't work in the world of competition. So I've had to come up with a gold, silver, and bronze category for the individual and the institutional awards. So that preamble, I hope, puts it into context. So I'll start off with the individual awards, and let me just see if I can work out how to share my screen. Okay, right. So I'll go in reverse order, bronze up to gold for the individual awards. And I've made some my own notes, which I'll read out rather than try to sort of come up with some off-the-cuff comments. So in bronze position is someone called Joey Black, and Joey Blackwell uses TeacherMatic in one of Her Majesty's prisons at Stafford. And if anybody's ever seen the rather excellent drama called Waiting for the Out, you can understand how challenging it must be to be an educator in a prison context. And Joey's application really demonstrated the pure social, emotional, and inclusive impact that using TeacherMatic has made the difference in their work. And he or she makes specific reference to Ask Someone Famous sort of option, and how engaged that's helped this person with their learners. So well done to Joey. Then in silver position is Thomas Hewitt. Thomas's application really demonstrated it was deeply embedded in pedagogy and reflective practice, and using TeacherMatic for planning, assessment, and design of course delivery. It just showed excellent practice and demonstrated clear benefits to the learners, which is what we're all about. So well done, Thomas.
Well done, Thomas.
Well done, Thomas. I'll just reiterate, all the applications were good, and I've had to pick 3, and it's like kind of like splitting hairs on some of the things that people have said. Every one of them have demonstrated excellent practice. And then in gold position is someone called Kathy McCabe. Is Kathy here?
Yes, Kathy is here. Congratulations, Kathy. Well done.
Well done. Kathy's work demonstrates real strong leadership, not just in her own college, but nationally as well. She's systematically woven TeacherMatic into the fabric of everything that the college does, which, sorry, I should have said this, Northern Regional College, and embedding it into their use of Canvas, VLE. She also spent 2 years championing the platform with government departments, the Department for the Economy. So Kathy's a real sort of sector leading, demonstrates sector leading practice, and from our perspective as TeacherMatic, she's a great ambassador for us. So well done, Kathy. So in terms of the individual awards, Kathy will get a luxury hamper, and we will issue certificates to the bronze and silver winners as well. And obviously that's great on your CV, I would imagine. Okay, let's move on to the institutional awards. I keep on repeating myself here, but I'm just saying that making these, trying to split one from the other and come up with these categories was very challenging. So in bronze position is Manchester College, and I know somebody from Manchester College is here because they're going to talk next. Is that Rajesh? Is that right?
That's correct, yes. Yes.
Well done, Rajesh.
Well done, Rajesh, and to you and your colleagues.
Manchester College demonstrates the large scale approach and how they've changed cultural practice of the use of AI and the use of TeacherMatic. A really excellent strategic approach with the broad adoption and a strong staff development program. So well done, Manchester College and Rajesh. Well done. And then in silver position is Stanmore College. Stanmore, I believe, I can't remember what specifically, but I know they were they got some awards in last year's ceremony. So it's quite good that they're maintaining the standard. So Stanmore College win our silver category. So Stanmore College's application demonstrated that they understand that AI effectiveness relies heavily on rigorous human moderation, that you actively need to sort of work with staff to make the difference. Otherwise, they'll just go back to old practices. So Stanmore's application is a really good role model for other institutions to adopt how to go about implementing the use of generative AI, and obviously from our perspective, TeacherMatic in particular. And then in first position, gold, is Barnet and Southgate College. Okay, well, in terms of their application, they did everything that Manchester and Stanmore did, but they demonstrated that the rigor with which they approached it. A very, very comprehensive and strategic approach, and they provided lots of evidence of the successes that they're reaping from implementing TeacherMatic, and it demonstrates that they really are sector leading and have got a mature institutional model for the use of generative AI and TeacherMatic. So in terms of the awards, then the winner, Barnet College, will get 100 licenses to accompany their existing ones. Stanmore College will get 50 licenses, and Manchester College will get 25 new licenses for 12 months, which I think hopefully will demonstrate our gratitude that they've actually done a lot for us in terms of the use of TeacherMatic. So Peter, I think that sort of sums up the awards. I don't know if you wanted to add something on the end of that.
Yeah, well, I mean, firstly, thanks very much to you, Jeff, because yeah, I didn't want to be in the King Solomon role, having to judge between our customers, because yeah, when I looked through the submissions that came through, they were all excellent. There were a lot of them, and it was a really tricky job for someone to do that. And I thought, I'll drag Jeff out of retirement to hand this challenging task to. So really appreciate you coming out of retirement to do that, Jeff, and great to see you again. And just well done to everyone who applied. You know, some amazing practice, and it's really gratifying, you know, for us at TeacherMatic to see the amazing things that people are doing with our platform. We'll be coming to those of you who won third, second, and first to ask you to contribute to future webinars in order to share the excellent practice that individually and organisationally that you've developed. Okay, so thank you very much and well done, everybody. And I'm now going to hand over to Rajesh. Congratulations again, Rajesh, to you and your colleagues on a very creditable third place in the organisational awards. Bearing in mind there's 350 organisations using TeacherMatic Plus, that's one hell of an achievement. Cheers then. Over to you.
Thank you very much for that, and thank you very much for the award. I gratefully accept the award on behalf of the Manchester College. I've got a number of colleagues here on the call today, so I'm sure they will all very much appreciate that commendation from yourselves. So thank you. I'm just going to share my screen, so just give me a second. Thank you very much. Okay, right. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about, just need to move you out of the way. That's it. Today I'm going to talk about our journey as users of TeacherMatic, and specifically I wanted to talk about how we've managed the use of TeacherMatic and how we've supported teachers in the digital learning team and the quality team overall. With using TeacherMatic and in order to try and ensure that we're providing appropriate quality teaching, learning and assessment that is impactful, engaging and leads to successful outcomes for students as well. So my name's Rajesh Mistry. Most people just know me as Raj around the college. I'm a quality manager in the quality team. I'm a line manager for the digital learning team. I'm 33 years here at the college. I was for a number of decades a ESAM, a BTEC IT level 3 teacher, and therefore I know all about that stuff to do with BTEC marking. It's very familiar to me. What I need to say is the Manchester College, actually, it's kind of a bit of a double award for us, really, because the Manchester College is part of the LTE group, and the LTE group encompasses the college, USM Manchester, our university centre, MOL Online Learning, and Novus, the prison education. So Joey Blackwell from Novus, I'll take a little bit of Joey's award as well as part of this, because he's part of our group, as well as as well as Total People, that is our apprenticeship arm. So we're a large education group, and therefore, if you like, governance and things around policy are particularly relevant to us, given our size and scale. Nothing groundbreaking here in terms of what we've done. It's just our experience, what we did, how we did it, and what we've learned along the way, really, more than anything else. So first things first, so the journey. So we started in 2022 academic year, very small scale trial with TeacherMatic, and naturally for a digital learning team, learning technology team, we concentrated on tools that we thought the early tools that were available, which were around classroom activities and that sort of stuff that was directly used by teachers within the classroom, and we kind of started to do training sessions for teachers around that. As TeacherMatic expanded and the world of AI expanded in 2023-24, the college group as a whole identified, the group and the college as a whole identified the need to try and find out how AI was being used by teachers. So in 2023, there was a full college and USEN, our university centre, teacher survey where we surveyed over 300 respondents, teaching users of asking teachers about their use of AI, and that was really informative. And from that, it really formed the backbone of what came after, which is the things around our vision, the strategy going forward, how to engage with teachers or with staff members in general, and how we were going to go about understanding the digital skills which kind of surfaced at that point of teachers as well. The first group of teachers, during that year as well, there was a group of teachers that was brought together under what was called the AI working group, and we used that in order to gauge and find out more about AI use, get their ongoing feedback on TeacherMatic, and get a gauge on the growth of AI use as well. Then in 2024, our TMC Digital Vision was published. We recruited an innovation lead, and we began to explore assessment methods for digital skills, because we identified that without good digital skills confidence, we would never get good AI confidence as well. Then in 2025, a full thematic review of TeacherMatic usage was carried out by the college. Teachers and students were interviewed, and the feedback from that was that teachers very much liked TeacherMatic, wanted to use it, and were interested in us retaining it as one of our tools that was available to them. We also established our TMC AI Teaching Alliance, whose members are now called Pioneers, and more about that later, that I will go on to. It's on one of the other slides as well. To address the digital skills gap that I mentioned before, we also rolled out the JISC Building Digital Capability Self-Assessment, the Discovery tool, I think they also call it as well. Once again, more about that in a little while, but I'm going to move on to how we supported training and development for teachers. So the first thing to say is that the digital learning team sits inside the quality team, which I think has really helped us try and provide a kind of a real strategic approach to the way we adopted and used, trained and supported teachers with AI. So we've got learning technologists and the AI and digital innovation lead that sit inside the digital learning team. We do all the normal things that most learning technology teams do across colleges: structured CPD, what we call click and learn sessions with termly themes, recorded and repeated over time, live demonstrations, one-to-one coaching tailored to subject areas and confidence levels, and other information distribution sources like a bulletin board. We've also got within quality team our advanced practitioners, our advanced teaching practitioners, some of whom are on the call today, and these advanced practitioners, they're pedagogical specialists, but we also recognize that they were really powerful conduits for delivering the digital message. So they received train the trainer input and were therefore also able to signpost colleagues to generators as well. On the other side of things, sat inside departmental areas were heads of department quality. So they worked within curriculum areas to lead on quality, teacher development and outcomes for students, and therefore they were a good, if you like, once again, another method of us communicating and working with teams, as they were able to refer and request teachers for training and development, one-to-ones, group training, departmental training, and so on. On top of that, we've also got a number of training and development events across the year as well. So there's departmental training in January. There's a festival of learning in February and July planning days that are all in there, and we could use those events in order to once again deliver our message. Underpinning all of that is our support site, effectively our portal to all the training that we offer, called the Digital Hub. And once again, more about that in a little while. But first, I'm going to talk about our AI Teaching Alliance and the AI Pioneers. So we started the AI Alliance in 25-26. These are teachers chosen by heads of department quality, acting as advocates and being partners to, if you like, to teachers, between us and teachers. They're our champions, shall we say, at the end of the day. We use them to keep TeacherMatic high on the agenda and support peer-led sharing of practice, and use them to build interest and engagement. They also became our primary test group for generators in general, and were particularly useful for the JISC TeacherMatic feedback and marking pilot that we're currently part of as well. The Alliance came together this year and with specific themes that we wanted to address, and those were workload and well-being, feedback and assessment, and testing a tool as well. And we're going to carry on with that approach for the next academic year. We've also got version 2 of the Pioneers drafted, where we'll be asking more of them, more AI case studies, more customized use, particularly in around the use of agents, more curriculum team sharing, and to grow them as leaders in AI use in their own curriculum areas as well. So that we've seen as a really successful part of what we've developed this academic year. Now, as I mentioned, the Digital Hub is the thing here that the digital learning team have developed as a resource in order to kind of keep everything in one place around teacher development. It underpins all our training, everything from learning technology and ed tech that we offer is supported further here. It gives us, and the list on the left-hand side gives you a flavour of some of the resources. You can see that we also include training for managers as part of this as well. Well, the funny thing is, and that's one of the things I do here at the college, is not only do we offer ed tech training, but we're also now offering more widely training around data analysis, college systems, and those sorts of data analysis tools to managers as well, in order to develop their skills. And through that, as a byproduct of that, there's a general increase in all things digital, and particularly AI, as of course there's incredible time-saving opportunities for managers with the use of AI as well. We also link to other specialist areas, as you can see, and we also then have a distinct AI hub, a subsection within the Digital Hub, and in this section we have our resources like approved tools, do's and don'ts, posters, assessment scale, best practice, and that sort of thing. And on the next slide, you'll see some of the resources we developed. As you know, as you can see in terms of an adoption and trying to support take up, giving teachers the confidence to use and advise students how to use AI, artificial intelligence tools is essential. Here are just some of the resources developed this year. Highlights were kind of getting starting with AI for staff, supporting students to navigate AI use in teaching, learning and assessment. Plus, it was a link through to other college and group policies and strategies around digital, AI, acceptable use, as well as other resources like JCQ guidance and other guidance from the DFE as well. As you know, particularly for quality team, it's all about impact. Here's how we measured it during our time over this period as well. The first thing we wanted to do is we wanted to get to new teachers early. New teachers receive a digital welcome at the beginning of their time at the college. And so we see it as a key opportunity to try and introduce ourselves to those practitioners to make sure that we can then point them in the right direction, meet them preferably in person, therefore easing and supporting them from the word go, and then also giving us an opportunity to do follow-up activity with them and gain a valuable feedback from them with regard to their use of tools and hopefully, if you like, as a byproduct of that, making sure that we retain them as staff members as well as valued staff members. Through analysis of usage data for TeacherMatic, and that's one of the things I'm particularly interested in, we were able to identify heavy users of TeacherMatic to get their feedback, generate some case studies, and showcase their use. And then, of course, we did a lot, and that's a lot of feedback activity, staff and student voice activity with teachers to try and make sure that we were evaluating whether TeacherMatic and other AI tools was useful to them, and feed that through to everybody at TeacherMatic as well. So that included bespoke surveys of TeacherMatic usage, thematic student surveys, plus we gathered feedback as part of existing quality-led activities that we have, like learner voice surveys, work scrutiny, thematic reviews. This year we've done thematic reviews in a number of different areas, assessment and feedback being one of the key areas, but also things like KSB and preparation for adulthood as well. We have learning walks, curriculum deep dives, or curriculum quality reviews as they're now called as well. And of course, we also had key questions that were put into teacher professional discussions and into the professional development plans, or the what a lot of people know as PD appraisals as well, associated with digital and that if you like aspect of a teacher's development as well. So next, I'm going to talk about the use of TeacherMatic usage data. That was particularly interesting to me. What we did was we took the top 20 since we have for all of the TeacherMatic data that we have across since 2022. What we did is we ranked the generator usage, took our top 20, and then split them into 4 areas: classroom activities, planning, student review, and assessment and feedback. So here's the first graph. So this is the one associated with classroom activities. You can see the generators across the bottom, and what we found is that initial interest in teaching and learning activities did reduce over time. Of course, you need to remember that resources tend to be created once and then used many times, so that you don't necessarily rerun generators multiple times. Generator usage was initially a little scattergun, but then settled down to some core favorites over time. Generators that reduce workload and support high volume activities became the most popular. So, for example, you can see that the worksheet generator in dark blue increased between 24-25 and 25-26 by 153%, probably because of the range of activities that are provided in one go, in one use of the generator. Moving on to planning and lesson planning and curriculum planning. You can see the generators across the bottom in the legend around lesson planning, schemes of learning, and schemes of work. Once again, these resources we know that these resources tend to be created once and then used many times. With most of the usage, because if I look at the detailed information, we can see that these were used at the beginning and the end of the academic year during those kind of traditional planning periods. Well, there was a reduction in 25-26 compared to the previous academic year. We're not too concerned about this, as once you've created the materials, you don't create them again. And of course, we've not finished the 25-26 academic year yet. Moving on to student review and reports, this was one of the ones that I think, and given what you've demonstrated in today's session, I think would be really valuable, is for us to reintroduce the use of these types of generators to teachers, because there's some incredible time-saving opportunities here. The figures mostly correspond with the October-November student report writing period. In 25-26, there was a drop in the use of these generator types that have a real kind of potential to save lots of time, and it probably points to more timely training on our part. Note though, of course, as you know, and I'm sure you know, as a teacher, when you're writing student reports, you often have your own method of time saving. Teachers may well have tried the generator and then decided to go back to their own time-saving methods. But of course, we will try and attempt to reintroduce these generators to them, particularly given what I've seen today. And then finally, of the three, these are the feedback generators, and this is and of course. Teachers are really interested in what gives them the biggest bang for their buck, if you like. And as I've said, generators that reduce workload and support high volume activities were the ones that were were of most interest. 85% increase in usage this year compared to the last academic year, which isn't surprising. Firstly, there's the time-saving opportunities, and secondly, there's the amount of work that we've done in kind of promoting the feedback generators in TeacherMatic to teachers. As I said, this comes as no surprise given the GIST TeacherMatic pilot that we're involved with, and the support activities and evaluation activities that we've done. So moving on, what have we learnt? We've learnt that governance is key. So here are some of the things that are kind of key for us. Governance is key. Staff want to follow policies and procedures. And so we're part of, like I said, we're part of the LTE group, and the group has now moved quickly to establish policies that are centered around AI and its use. We need to address the digital skills gap as well. Without digital confidence, there's going to be no AI confidence, as I mentioned before. Training and support is important. Regular training on generators that correspond with what's happening at that particular time in the academic year. Customized and contextualized training is important. Teachers want to see their use cases. High volume tasks are the most important. Training is best delivered by teachers as well. That's one of the main things that we found. So teachers and pioneers need to be the ones that deliver that training, that's delivered in a language that teachers understand, that's tailored for their particular students. Another thing is train the managers, particularly important. If you train the managers, they're more likely to direct teachers towards you as well. TeacherMatic we found that TeacherMatic also has provided a lower barrier to entry into the world of AI, with teachers then wanting to train on other tools that provide AI functionality as well. Teachers often graduate onto other AI tools, like I said, and have and have become better at things like prompt craft as a result of their initial use of TeacherMatic. Analytics can help you measure impact and identify the trailblazers, gather as much quantitative and qualitative feedback as possible via existing activities if you can, to ensure that you don't encounter feedback fatigue. We've identified more that we need to do as well, of course, teachers on, we need to ensure that there's more training for teachers on using AI directly and transparently for teaching, learning and assessment, contextualizing it for subjects, courses, course levels and types of activity, and that it complies with college group policy and DfE guidance. And we've also identified the need for more student guidance as well, not just notices and posters, more structured lessons around using AI, and along with this, student-facing policies that make clear how they can use AI, that makes clear use and misuse of AI to them. So that kind of brings me to the end. I've gone over slightly, so apologies for that. Thank you very much for your time listening to me today.
Don't worry at all about that.
I'll hand it over. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks very much, Rajesh. If you just wait around, if anyone's got any questions for Rajesh, I mean, Rajesh, I'm really, really impressed, and I can see why you won the Bronze Award, and I can only wonder, you know, how anyone could have beat on you, because that's such an incredibly comprehensive, well-organised, strategic approach to implementing AI overall, and TeacherMatic specifically. I think, you know, as a college, you've done some amazing work there, and the reason I invited you today was, you know, based on the contributions I've heard from you and your colleagues at the JISC assessment pilot, and you know, it was very clear to me from hearing people at your college talk about what they were doing, how well you were doing as a college. And particularly in that assessment sphere. So the question I've got, while anyone else can have a think about questions too, is you're clearly well on, you know, you've started that journey around AI assessment, and you've got quite a number of your staff doing that. So if you could share with people here, perhaps who have not started on that journey, or very much maybe just putting their toes into the water, what key bits of advice you would give them in order to make using AI and the TeacherMatic AI tools successful, and what benefits are you already finding from implementing that?
Oh gosh, there's a lot of things you've asked there. Key things.
What's made it work, and what benefits are you getting?
What's made it work? Once again, the first thing is thanks very much for the accolade and your compliment. I'm one of many people here at the college that have been involved with this. Just a very small cog in the whole kind of system. The first one of the key things that we need to do is we need to feel confident that we're supported at top level around this. So that whilst, if you like, teachers and often students are ahead of the game in using AI, the senior leadership needed to catch up very quickly and ensure that they provided as much guidance, policy, procedure as possible in order to try and make sure that teachers felt confident that they were applying policies and procedures properly. That we then had to base our, if you like, use of AI and systems around a quality framework as well. So as a quality team, we're very much, you know, one of the things that happened last academic year was we had an Ofsted inspection, so we had to be. It was very much top of mind was things about compliance with everything Ofsted. So we needed to do things in the right way and that had the most impact for learners. So putting students at the centre of it all, really, more than anything else. And then we know that really the best people to talk to teachers are other teachers, and so that's why we created the alliance of teachers that would be our conduit to get communications into interdepartmental teachers to try and spread the message and spread good good practice. We have very good relations with teams. Sometimes the quality team can be seen as being kind of the big bad people that sit at the back of classrooms with clipboards. Hopefully that's a thing of the past at the Manchester College, and therefore we feel as though we've got a holistic approach where we have a number of different staff members that work with teachers to try and send the message and provide support as appropriate as well. And I think that kind of message of giving managers as well as teachers confidence has led to that success really more than anything else. And one of the things that we found particularly this year, and one of the things that we want to kind of build on for next academic year, is teacher use cases, teachers delivering their examples of how they've used a tool and how they're using tools. Those have been particularly impactful, I think, with teachers, because they can see it used in practice rather than a learning technologist just giving you a example, providing some sort of underlying giving more contextualized examples of their use as well. I can't remember what the second part of that was, Peter.
Well, about the assessment pilot,
yes,
and you know, you're well on the, you know, you've actually, you know, made some strong strides into using AI assessment. What tips would you give to colleges who are at the start of that journey on using AI in assessment and for marking and feedback? What have you learned? What are the benefits, and how would you advise people, you know, can make a start?
We're on a journey with it. One of key things are getting feedback. We need to try and get feedback from teachers in terms of their use of AI and the generators, particularly around the assessment feedback generator. It's what we found was we delivered training. We kind of framed the pioneers as our kind of key people to use the feedback generator, but actually the analytical data that's available as an admin under TeacherMatic was really useful, because we found that it wasn't pioneers that were using the AI, the feedback generator. It was other staff, and of course we were able to then identify them and approach them, and they were very open to talking to us and providing our feedback. So we found those heavy users very quickly, and we were able to talk to them pretty much in person. And what I will say to you is if you're part of any sort of team that's kind of gathering feedback, is don't just send the teacher a survey to complete, because it's often something that they're far too busy to do. Go and speak to them, go and get some feedback in person from them, and they will give you some immense, really useful kind of guidance on the way and approach kind of and approach going forward. So that's one of the things that we found. And of course, it's a variety of things as well. That's where we've kind of found that one of the things through that feedback process, we've kind of discovered that really teachers need more guidance, more help, more training and development, particularly around using AI for assessment. Teachers are very much interested in anything that's going to save them time, but we need to make sure that they're doing it in the right way, with very much include appraising what the AI produces, and if you like, using it as a basis for their own feedback, not just using the feedback in itself.
Wonderful.
Okay.
That's really useful. I mean, a couple of things I would take from that. It's great to see that in, you know, what is, I think, one of the biggest colleges in the country. I know a few years ago it was the biggest college in the country. That you are doing that one-to-one. You know, you're not. It must. You know, you are talking individually to staff, and that's wonderful that you're doing that. And it's great to hear how useful that's being. And I think your comment there about giving guidance and support to people using the feedback tools to make sure they're using appropriately leads in beautifully, almost like it was planned, but it's not planned, to my next session. So thank you very much, Rajesh. Excellent thing. And I would like to introduce Esam now, who's going to be very much talking about that theme, the SAFE framework, which is guidance that we've developed, well, very much Esam, but with support of others and lessons from the JISC pilot around how you can make best use of the assessment tools in TeacherMatic. So over to you, Esam.
Thank you very much, Peter. All right. Rajesh, that was absolutely brilliant. I've sent you a message. Hopefully, I'm going to reach out to you after this webinar for some advice with the next edition of our rollout guide, because I think you've got some valuable insights to help us make a better version of our current rollout guide. So I've just shared with you 2 links. By all means, do click especially on the first one, because this part of the presentation is all based on this SAFE framework. So with that being said, thank you, everyone. I'm really glad that you're here. Yes, it's me again. So I just want to start by saying this isn't a product pitch. So I'm not pushing out TeacherMatic. So what I'm doing today is actually sharing with you a presentation which I delivered last week in my deep dive. And it's come out of a genuine problem that we keep running into. Institutions that wanted to use AI-supported feedback responsibly had no structured way to think about it. So this SAFE framework is our attempt to address that. So it emerged from working directly with educators, quality teams, and senior leaders, and it's shaped by the kinds of questions they actually ask, not the ones we expected them to ask. So with that being said, let's start with a poll, right? So if you could all just log into Slido, and just the key word is framework to get access into the poll. How many users do we have? We've got 37 participants in today's webinar now. We had more. So if you could all please engage in this. And the question is, has your institution started using AI-supported feedback tools? We'll wait a minute to get your responses for that. For those that haven't joined the poll, do please carry on and I'll start my presentation. The poll is live for the next couple of days. It'd be really useful, I think, for everyone just to get everyone's feedback. There are a few other polls in this presentation. So what we'll cover today. So why AI-supported feedback is becoming unavoidable in education. So AI-supported feedback or assistant feedback is becoming harder to ignore. And that really creates some real pressure, I think, for schools, colleges, and universities. For example, as I keep saying, I was a lecturer in FE for over 20 years, and with AI, I would be exploring ways of how to leverage AI to reduce my workload, especially when it came to feedback. So I'm going to introduce you to the SAFE framework and walk you through each of the 4 pillars with practical examples. I think that's really important to state. You know, with the practical examples, it's going to make it, I think, much more practical for you to implement AI-assisted feedback. So we'll look at what the implementation actually looks like. Be honest, very honest about the limitations. And if we have time, hopefully we can open it up for a discussion. So I've tried to keep this grounded throughout. So less much theory and more things you can actually take back and use. So here's another poll. What is your biggest single barrier to your college, university, or school starting with AI-supported feedback? What's your biggest single barrier? Cost. Pete, I think you need to tell them how affordable we are.
Yeah, I mean, if you, I think most of you are TeacherMatic users, but if you're not TeacherMatic users, it's you buy more than 50 licenses, it's £30 per year per person. So that's cheap as chips. And so yeah, I know that there are some AI assessment tools that are very expensive, and I did get a call. I won't name the tool in place, but one of our colleges rang me up in hysterics saying, "You won't believe what I've just been quoted for this AI assessment tool," and it was something like 10 times what they're paying for their TeacherMatic license. And all this tool did was assessment, and TeacherMatic has 150 different tools as well as assessment. So you shouldn't find cost a big barrier.
Yeah, absolutely. And TeacherMatic provides over 150 generators. So it's not just the feedback, but as Peter said, there are other providers that just solely focus on feedback, and they cost so much more. We provide over 150 generators, including these feedback generators that are becoming much more sophisticated and advanced. And as you saw, we also have a dedicated BTEC feedback generator there. So some of you have come back with policy, and we really hope to resolve this issue with regards to policy. And I think that's the inspiration behind the SAFE framework, because this is very uncharted territory, right? And you know, institutions are unsure how to approach this. And we hope with the SAFE framework, it actually helps you create a policy that reflects this new reality that we are in today. So let's get started, and hopefully at the end of this presentation, you will be less anxious about policies, and hopefully you can take this back. And just to let you know, Peter and myself are able to deliver a whole day session on the SAFE framework and support you and your teams in creating these policies so you can integrate AI assisted feedback. So I want to start with a question that every educator I've spoken to understands instantly. Right, you've marked 30 essays, probably over your precious weekend, and the feedback you wrote on the last 10 is noticeably thinner than the first 10. It's not because you care less, it's because you're absolutely exhausted. And the student who submitted last gets feedback that arrives weeks after they've emotionally moved on from their assignment. And this is the feedback problem that already exists, even before AI enters the picture at all. The question isn't whether AI is perfect. It's not. It's whether we can use it to close this gap responsibly. So these three challenges, and I've experienced them, as I keep saying, countless of times, you know, as a past FE lecturer, these are serious challenges: workload, timelessness, and consistency. And they're not new. This existed before the era of generative AI. You know, I lived them as a lecturer. And I don't need to tell you as educators, but feedback is one of the most pedagogically valuable things we can do. But it's also one of the most cognitively expensive. So what AI-supported feedback does when implemented well is reduce the mechanical burden without removing that professional judgment. So that's the case we're making today. Not that AI writes better feedback than you. I know it used to write better feedback than me, that's for sure. But what we're saying is that AI can give you a strong first draft worth reviewing quickly at scale. So what's interesting about this slide is that many of these tensions, they're already there in institutions, regardless of AI. So things like academic integrity, data protection, fairness, these are governance issues that most quality teams are already managing. But what AI does is it intensifies them. It adds urgency to these questions that might otherwise have just drifted along. So what we found is that the institutions that are getting ahead of this aren't waiting for this problem to land on their desk. They're already, building their governance position today before something, goes really wrong. So I want to give you a bit of context before we get into the SAFE framework, because this framework didn't emerge in isolation. It came directly of us building these advanced feedback tools and watching how institutions responded to them. So as these tools became more capable, the questions we got changed. So early on, people were asking, oh, does it work? And it's proven that it does work. But now they're asking, how do we govern it? How do we explain it to our learners? How do we tell external examiners? And these are the right questions to ask, and they're exactly the questions this SAFE framework is designed to help you answer. So I love this question. I really do. Would you be comfortable as a student receiving AI-assisted feedback? Would you? Let's see your responses. Including you, Peter, and Ollie, and Jeff. Everyone, do answer. How comfortable would you be? Peter, do you want to jump in? Because I think you had a really good explanation about this, unconscious bias and things like that. I think it would be worth explaining this right now.
Absolutely. And I'll say that when we first considered this, and this is something that Esam loves to feel very smug about, Esam was telling us that we should be implementing AI assessment a few years ago, and I was no, this is not the way to go. And I, in particular, had concerns about a sort of Orwellian nightmare of students creating their assessments with AI, teachers marking them with AI, and no human brain involved along the way. But I think we've moved a long way from that. And when we started exploring AI and assessment, it was very clear how good it was at doing it, and that we could build a way where we had the teacher in the loop. So if I was still ILT director at Heart of Worcestershire College, which I was for many years, and I was implementing AI and assessment, I would talk to the students and say, don't let this scare you. Now, the initial response from students here when they're being told we're going to start using AI for assessing your work potentially could be, hang on, you're telling us we can't use AI to do our work, so how can it's okay for you to use AI to grade our work? And I think that's a perfectly reasonable question to ask. But I think there's a number of ways in which, as an organisation, you can respond to any concerns that students have. So, firstly, I would talk to them about the what Esam mentioned before about teacher exhaustion, saying that be aware of how busy your teachers are. That on a Sunday they may be marking 100 assignments. Do you want your assignment to be the 95th one? And your teachers are only human, and they're not going to be able to mark as accurately when it's the 95th one as the first one. Another issue, and I think students are probably aware of this, is that teachers don't like all their students the same. Teachers have both unconscious and conscious biases regarding students. I'm sure that you may remember yourself that you might have thought a particular teacher didn't like you very much, and they might have marked you down because they didn't like you. I know it. I felt it happened to me once or twice. So there are those conscious biases, and there are unconscious biases, and there's a lot of research out there that shows that the way teachers grade, if they're just looking at names on papers, they grade differently for male and female names. They grade differently for names from different ethnic groups. They grade differently for names that are sort of middle class names versus working class names. There's all the things so those things can all make a difference. And so if you can say to your students that having AI as part of the assessment process, but supported by teachers, can mean you get feedback quicker, that feedback is fairer, it's more detailed, and it avoids these problems around bias and exhaustion.
Thank you very much. And we're not saying AI doesn't have biases, because it does, because it's been trained on data. So this is the human in the loop approach that we advise. So thank you very much, everyone, for
It doesn't have that bias. I don't like that student's face.
yeah, that particular Peter, absolutely. Yeah. All right. So thank you very much, everyone, for contributing. Let's jump into what the SAFE framework is. And this is, this is the pivot point of the session. Everything we've talked about so far, the workload challenge, the sector tensions, the maturity of the tools, leads us here. So SAFE is our attempt to give institutions a structured, principled way to adopt AI-supported feedback without having to work it out from scratch. So this name is intentional, right? It's an acronym. And the acronym stands for Safeguarding, Augmentation, Fairness, and Ethics. Each pillar maps to a real concern that institutions have raised with us. So this is not, this came from real practice, right? So I think it's worth being explicit what SAFE is not, right? Because frameworks, I think, can easily become marketing material, right? And we're trying to avoid that here. So SAFE is not a claim that TeacherMatic feedback is always right, or that you can skip educator review, or that this replaces your awarding body guidance. It isn't. So the framework is deliberately honest about the limitations, because the worst thing we could do is oversell this and lose the trust of you and the institutions that are part of the TeacherMatic community. So if something in SAFE doesn't fit your context, I think that's very, very valuable information, and it should prompt a conversation, and it shouldn't be brushed aside. So these 4 pillars are the architecture of SAFE. They're not a hierarchy. You don't do them in order and just tick them off. They're more like 4 lenses that you apply simultaneously to your practice. So every institutional decision about AI-supported feedback should be tested against all 4. So when I work through each pillar over the next few slides, I'll try and make each one feel concrete rather than abstract. So the question to hold in mind is this: what would this look like in your own institution with your staff and your learners? So the first one, pillar 1, is safeguarding data and privacy, right? So data protection is the pillar that tends to make legal and compliance teams sit up, and rightly so. So when an educator uploads a student's assignment to an AI tool, that's a data processing event. It needs to sit within a legal framework. So the questions you should be asking as institutions is this: where does the data go? Who processes it? And under what terms? So at TeacherMatic, we've tried to be explicit about this. So there is no model training on uploaded work. There's UK-based processing, and there's something called full sub-processor transparency. But this principle should apply to any AI provider you're evaluating. So this slide is the practical companion to the S pillar. So it splits responsibilities very clearly. Here's what TeacherMatic commits to on the left-hand side, and here's what you need to do on your side. So I encourage you to look particularly at the institutional column. So the commitments around student consent, retention, deletion procedures, and awarding body checks. These are the things that need to be on someone's to-do list. Who takes responsibility for that? The question to leave with your team is, do your current data protection policies actually cover AI-supported feedback workflows? Because most don't, because this is uncharted and new territory. The three questions I think we encourage you to ask of any AI provider, including TeacherMatic, is this: is student work used to train or fine-tune any AI model at any point? Who retains the intellectual property? And what happens to uploaded content after the feedback has been generated? So the answer to question one, whether student work is used for model training, should be an unambiguous no. And if it isn't, that's a serious governance concern. So second pillar, the A pillar, and I feel very strongly about this as a past lecturer and educator, and it's all about augmenting professional judgment, because it sits at the heart of what makes AI-supported feedback legitimate. So the educator is always the author of the feedback decision. Please remember that, not the AI. The AI writes a draft, a strong first draft. The educator reads it, edits it, challenges it where it's gone wrong, and releases it when they're satisfied. So that's not a soft guideline. Under SAFE, that is non-negotiable. The moment you remove educator review from this process, you've crossed a red line that the framework doesn't support. So this human-in-the-loop principle is the bedrock of the A pillar, the augmenting professional judgment. What it means in practice is that the educator's professional authority over feedback is never transferred to the AI, not even partially. So the AI generates the draft, the educator reads it, challenges anything that feels wrong, and releases it when they're content with it. And I want to be honest that this requires a certain kind of discipline. It really does. The temptation is to skim review under time pressure, and that time pressure is real. But the educator, the professional educator who reads every sheet against their professional judgment, is doing something genuinely different from someone who approves outputs without engaging with them critically. And we are going to implement a technical solution which won't overcome people that will skim read and just approve, but we are, as Ollie said in his segment, going to implement something in the admin dashboard that will force educators to make sure that they've given at least a minimum of 3 comments on every piece of students' work. But this is just, it's not, a professional. So the responsibility would be on the educator to do that, who is professional and ethical. This is just a technical, it's not even a solution, but a technical idea that hopefully helps educators do that. Right, so this 80-20% model is illustrative, and I want to be very clear about that. So the point isn't about the specific numbers, 80% or 20%. The point is the principle. AI handles the volume and the structure, and the educator adds the nuance and judgment. So in practice, what this looks like is an educator who previously spent 3 hours marking, 20 pieces of work, now spending 90 minutes reviewing 20 AI-generated drafts against their own professional standards. So that's a genuine workload reduction, but it's also a different, I think, cognitive task because it requires active engagement and not just passive approval. So this is a scenario, a real scenario based on a real scenario, by the way, because it captures something important about how good AI-supported feedback practice actually looks like. So the educator in this example didn't just hand over the marking. They structured the prompt carefully. They thought about the nuances, including this hand-drawn element that they had in their assignment that rightly so shouldn't penalize smaller groups. And they reviewed every sheet before it went out, and they were very transparent with their learners about this whole process. And no student in this scenario raised a concern. That outcome didn't happen by accident. It happened because this educator treated the AI as a tool they were directing, not a system running autonomously. So pillar 3, fairness and inclusion. And this is, I think, often a pillar that surprises people because the instinct is to think of AI as more consistent than humans. And in some ways, it really is. But consistency isn't the same as fairness. And just going back to Peter's point about bias, an AI trained on particular kinds of feedback can systematically favor certain writing styles, certain cultural framings, certain ways of arguing a point. And it can reduce variability across a cohort while introducing a different kind of bias. And this is why this educator review isn't just a governance requirement, it's the primary fairness safeguard in this whole workflow. So going back to, the practical part, as I promised, the inclusion dimension here matters particularly for educators working with diverse cohorts. English as an additional language learners, neurodivergent students, students from non-traditional academic backgrounds. These are the learners for whom the tone and framing of feedback can make the biggest difference. So sometimes AI-generated feedback won't automatically always get that right. And if you've looked at the advanced feedback generator, if you look at the refined functionality, which is in place in all our generators, it becomes extremely important to take advantage of that refine, because when it gives feedback, you can use the refined functionality to actually do this using AI, by the way. So don't always be satisfied with what the AI has given you the first time round. Take advantage of that refined functionality. So I just want to stress that professional knowledge or professionalism is irreplaceable, right? And you really need to consider fairness and inclusion here. The last pillar, pillar 4. This is the pillar that most people, I think, sometimes underestimate because it sounds softer than data protection or governance. And what I would like to argue is that transparency is what makes everything else sustainable. Without it, students will lose trust and staff will feel uncomfortable. And the whole practice becomes something people do quietly and don't talk about it openly. So the institutions that have introduced AI-supported feedback most successfully are the ones that were proactively transparent with their learners, with students, and with external stakeholders before anyone even asked. So the practical parts. So what I find very interesting about this slide is that transparency obligations go in 3 directions at once. And each requires a slightly different approach. With students, plain language matters most. With staff, It's about making sure no one is left trying to navigate this unsupported. And with external stakeholders like examiners, awarding bodies, quality teams, it's about documentation and process. The combination of all three is what builds the kind of institutional trust that allows AI-supported feedback to become normal and an accepted part of practice rather than something that causes anxiety. What the research on student acceptance tells us is that something that many educators already know intuitively. How you introduce something matters as much as what it is. So I'll give you an example. Students who are told the AI marks your work react very differently from students who are told your teacher reviews every piece of work before it reaches you, and AI never decides your grade. The content might be identical, right? But the framing creates completely different levels of trust. And SAFE's transparency principle exists precisely to support this kind of honest and direct communication. We are running out of time. So this is the pivot into the practical implementation section. Everything we've covered about SAFE as a framework needs to translate into actual action. Policies updated, staff trained, students informed, processes documented. And I find that this is where the conversations get most concrete, because it moves from principles and theory to the question of who actually is going to do what and by when. So the next few slides gives you a structured thinking about that. And because of time constraints, I won't, spend too much on them. But I think the order matters. You need to create a working group that is cross-functional, from quality, IT, legal, of course, teaching staff, and I think very importantly, a student voice. And it needs to address all of these 4 areas before rollout, not while rollout is happening. You should do this before. So I think this is really interesting, and I do want to spend a minute on this. This 5-step workflow is worth, I think, looking at, because it's really interesting to see that it's only in step 2 that involves AI, where you generate the draft, right? It's only in step 2. Everything else is human here. The upload decision is human. The review is human. The release is human. And, the record is human. So understanding this has helped a lot of institutions make the case internally for why this isn't AI marking as such. It's AI assisted feedback with educator oversight at every single step. Right, so here's some advice. I think you probably shouldn't start with summative assessment, because I think that's too high stake. You probably want to start with formative, right? And, also the awarding body implications are a bit too complex right now. And staff anxiety tends to overwhelm, I think, everything else. So formative feedback on first submissions, practice assignments, reflective journals, I think these are all low stakes. And then you can move on to some of the higher stake things. So important caveats, and I need to stress them, right? Educator review is not optional, right? It can't be a shortcut. It really can't. AI should not determine the final grades. Always check with your awarding body. I think they say in most part, it's okay to use AI formatively, but not for final grades. But obviously you have to check for each individual awarding body, because the rules vary. So let's have a look. This is a self-assessment that I am planning to build a checklist for everyone. So we will be creating a checklist and a bunch of resources, especially for these workshops that for Peter and myself can attend to support your organization in integrating the SAFE framework within your organization. So with 1 minute left, who needs to be in the room before your institution feels ready to act? What conversation does SAFE help you have with them? So if you all can all contribute, and then we'll wrap that up, and I'll just hand over to Peter for his final remarks. And with that, I just want to thank you very much for attending these community webinars and being part of this very, vibrant TeacherMatic community. And we really do thank every single one of you. Without you and your contributions, TeacherMatic wouldn't be the platform, it is today. So thank you very much. Peter?
Thank you very much, Esam. So if anybody has any questions for Esam on his excellent presentation and the SAFE framework, and I do advise that you all use the link in the chat and download and read the SAFE framework. Please put your hand up now if you'd like to talk, or type into the chat if you want to ask a question there.
I do want to just state something really important, Peter. Yeah, so this framework is a live document. It's an ongoing document, and we're part of the JISC pilot here. So some of the outcomes of that pilot will feed back into this framework. But it's incredibly important to get everyone's feedback regarding this framework. So we highly encourage everyone, please, to look through the framework and also to give us feedback at this link here, shaw.by/safe feedback. We will be sending out a recording in about a week or so, and we will also be providing the links. So please do give us feedback and tell us how we can improve this framework.
Thank you very much, Esam. Okay. See, people are already downloading the document. And so that is the end of the formal part of this webinar. So, thanks to Esam, Rajesh, Jeff, and Ollie for their wonderful contributions today. I hope you've all found it useful. And as usual, we're all going to hang around for a little bit now in case anyone has any final questions for the TeacherMatic team. Or any suggestions as to any new functionality you'd like to see, anything that you feel we can improve on. So I will formally draw this meeting to a close now. It's just coming up to 3 o'clock. So thank you everybody for coming today. We really do appreciate your time, and hope the rest of the week goes great for you. Okay, take care, and we will shut the meeting down now. Bye-bye. Thanks very much again, guys.
Bye.